What science discovered in the bottomless pit. The deepest part of our world has a name, the Challenger Deep. It's a 7-mile wound in the Earth's crust, a place of absolute darkness and a pressure so violent it can pulp human flesh into a fine red mist before it even reaches the bottom. For most of history, we assumed it was a sterile void, a dead zone. But what if it isn't? What if that crushing, empty blackness isn't a geological feature, but a prison? And what if, for the very first time, we heard the inmates screaming to get out? This is the story of a discovery so terrifying it has been officially denied. A project that exists only in whispers, and a sound from the bottom of the world that threatens to prove that our oldest, most primal fears have been living right beneath our feet all along. The Anomaly. The story begins in the early 2000s with a clandestine project allegedly codenamed Hecate. Its mission was simple: drop a new generation of hypersensitive hydrophones into the Mariana Trench and create the first-ever acoustic map of the abyss. For months, the data was predictable. The groans of shifting tectonic plates, the faint clicks of deep-sea life, the deep hum of the planet itself. Then they found it, an anomaly. It was a signal pulsing from the absolute deepest point of the Challenger Deep, and it was utterly impossible. It wasn't the random noise of geology, and it didn't match the biological signature of any known creature. It was structured, complex, and repetitive. It had a rhythm, a cadence, like a heartbeat where no heart could ever beat. The signal was, without a doubt, artificial. The first question was, who or what was broadcasting from a place more hostile than the surface of Mars? The second question sent a wave of ice through the control room. Was it a message, or was it a warning? To find out, a specialized probe was built, an unmanned vessel called Orpheus, named for the Greek hero who journeyed into the underworld. It was a name that would prove to be a dark, twisted prophecy. The first voice. The descent of the Orpheus probe was a journey into pure, suffocating blackness. For hours, it fell, a single point of light in an endless void. The pressure mounted with every meter, an invisible force that made the probe's titanium hull groan in protest. On the ship above, the Hecate team watched, their world shrinking to the numbers on a screen. As Orpheus passed 8,000 meters, the hydrophones began picking up faint, wispy sounds. At first, they were dismissed as pressure-induced glitches, phantom noises from equipment being tortured to its limits. But the abyss wasn't listening to logic. The sounds grew more defined. They weren't random. They sounded disturbingly organic, like faint, wet, tearing sounds. Then, the whispers started. They had a strange rhythm, a cadence that felt disturbingly familiar. The lead acoustician, a woman who'd spent 30 years translating ocean sounds, felt a cold, physical sickness creeping into her bones. She ran the audio through a dozen filters, stripping away static and interference. What was left was impossible. It was a voice, a single, clear voice rising from the crushing dark. It was speaking. A linguist on the team was rushed to the audio station. He listened, his face turning ghost white. He recognized the phonetics, the glottal stops, the ancient structure. It was a language that hadn't been spoken on Earth in over 2,000 years. It was Akkadian, the dead tongue of Mesopotamian empires. A voice, speaking a language buried by time, was conversing with the darkness. And as Orpheus sank deeper, the single voice was joined by another, and then another. It hears us now. The single Akkadian voice swelled into a chorus. The hydrophones, now straining at the very edge of their design, began registering a cacophony of torment. The linguist, frantically cross-referencing databases, identified more impossible voices. He heard Sumerian, a language so ancient its origins are a mystery. He heard Ablate, from a lost Syrian kingdom. He heard Hattic, the language of a people who vanished before the Hittites. It was a choir of the dead, a congregation of ghosts from the dawn of human civilization, all screaming in the dark. At 10,984 meters, the Orpheus probe hit the seafloor. The moment it settled into the silt, the audio feed exploded. The whispers were gone, replaced by an overwhelming roar of countless voices, a symphony of damnation rising from the throat of the world. The translation software struggled, but fragmented phrases began to flicker onto the screen. These weren't conversations. They were proclamations, laments, ancient cosmic complaints. The silence was a mercy. We who were before light are remembered. The vessel is broken, the seal is undone. It hears us now. That last translation froze the blood of everyone who read it. The voices, which had lamented for untold eons in the dark, suddenly changed. The chaotic chorus began to focus, to sharpen. The researchers had a sickening realization. The abyss knew it was being listened to. The probe was no longer a microphone. It was a dinner bell. Stripped of their scientific framework, the team understood. This wasn't the Tehom from Genesis or Tartarus from Greek myth. Those were just names. This was the place itself, a place of confinement. And Project Hecate had just picked the lock. The abyss stares back. According to the few unverified accounts that have leaked, the final moments of the Orpheus probe were pure, sanity-shattering chaos. The chorus of dead languages stopped. It was replaced by a single, unified voice that spoke in a tongue no one recognized. It wasn't a language. It was an anti-language, a weaponized sound designed to dismantle the human mind. The audio feed became a pressure wave of pure malevolence. On the ship above, researchers collapsed, bleeding from their eyes and ears as the sound vibrated through the hull. It wasn't just heard, it was felt. A physical violation that resonated in their bones and organs. The project's linguist reportedly began to scream, not in terror, but in sync with the broadcast. He tried to replicate the sounds, his jaw unhinging at an impossible angle as he clawed at his own tongue, babbling about the speaker in the void, before his throat simply ruptured in a spray of blood. The project was cleansed within the hour. Not just classified, erased. Hard drives were melted down. The team, those who survived with their minds intact, were scattered and silenced, bound by threats and NDAs backed by the full, terrifying weight of national security. The official story is that Project Hecate never existed. The Orpheus probe was lost in a training exercise, and the signal from the abyss was just a sensor malfunction. We live on a thin, fragile crust, believing the greatest mysteries lie in the stars. But it seems we were wrong. The oldest horrors aren't out there. They're down here. We've been living on the lid of a cosmic prison, and we just told the inmates that we have the key. We didn't just knock on the door of hell. We leaned in, put our ear to it, and whispered, "We are here." And now, for the first time, they know they are not alone. That leaves one simple question to keep you awake tonight. What happens when the oldest voices in the universe finally answer back? What do you think these voices were? Ancient gods or something far worse? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you want to explore more forbidden discoveries that science tries to hide, make sure you subscribe and activate the notification bell. You won't want to be left alone in the dark for what's coming next.